back to Leading Worship podcast. My name is Nick Ajamuti, and I'm joined here with Andy Chrisman. What's up, Andy? How you doing today?
What's up, Nick?
Man,
Doing good.
Good to have you, man. Thanks. This podcast is all about not just leading worship, it's leading people and teams. It's leading into the future and leading in terms of principles and ideas. And so the idea is that we want to get people thinking about how to lead worship better, thinking about what we're doing, not necessarily going through the motions, but really being intentional about our leadership and what we're called to do beyond singing, beyond what happens on a platform.
Yeah, and let me just say too that if you're just starting out leading worship and you're listening to this podcast, don't let all of this overwhelm you. Yeah. If you just, if all you know how to do right now is get on stage and lead a few songs, that's a great place to start. But that's why we have this podcast, Nick. That's why you and I are talking about these things, because of the years of experience that we have. That we want to help you continue the journey in what God has for you in worship leadership for yourself, for your church, and then just whatever the future may hold for you.
So good. If you are listening and there's a question that you have about leading worship, or maybe there's an issue that you're dealing with currently at your, in your team or in your journey, we would love to maybe help unpack it with you. And so feel free to send us a DM at Nick Ajamuti, at Andy Chrisman on Instagram. We'd love to connect with worship leaders wherever you are, and however we can encourage and equip you in your journey. That's what we're passionate about. So feel free to reach out. And then as we get these coming in, we'd love to address them on the podcast itself as they come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So today's topic is kind of a question that's going to tee us up for some fun stuff. So the question is, Andy, at what age do worship leaders age out, and why?
So why did you say so, Andy? Here's a question for you.
You're co-hosting.
because I'm old. Oh man, yeah, that's a loaded topic, and it's something that I deal with all the time. So I'm 56 years old, and I've been leading worship, Nick, since I was 14 years old.
Wow.
Like we didn't call it leading worship back then. We called it directing the hymns.
Wow.
In church back when I was a kid.
That's amazing.
But yeah, that is a big concern for a lot of people. I have a lot of friends of mine, a lot of peers, guys that are a lot younger than me, that feel like maybe they're not relevant anymore, or they don't have the energy of the young people coming up behind them, or man, they just don't get the new music that's out there. It doesn't speak to them. Maybe they're getting some vibes from their senior pastor, who might be, and I know this is the case too. There's a lot of worship pastors out there that are quite a bit older than their senior pastor. There's a lot of transition going on in churches with senior leadership.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is an issue. So that's something we definitely need to talk about.
Yeah, that's great, man. I think it's something that's probably in the back of everybody's mind, if you're in ministry, is what is my shelf life? and what is the end game? Like how, what it's hard for us as worship leaders. It's very rare to see people with, like, I got some gray whiskers coming in here, but it's very rare that you would see gray, that you would see gray, a lot of gray on the stage. And I'm not saying it's not there, but it's out there. Mm-hmm. And so, you kind of have to think through that and at least answer the question in your own mind. Like, man, what's my end game? What's my shelf life? How old is too old? And understanding your culture is one thing, but I think it really kind of opens the door to this word that we're going to unpack today. And that's the word relevance. And what makes you relevant? Andy, I'm just going to take a moment to say that when I'm in the room and you're leading worship, and I've been to Seeds Conference, I've been to Church on the Move multiple times and sat under your leadership in worship, age has never even been a thing that crossed my mind, because in the moment, just the way that you lead, the authority that you lead with, the way that you command the room, it was relevant to the moment. And everybody in the room was engaged and following you. And that sort of thing, to me, relevance trumps any other demographic stat that may be out there when it comes.
I really appreciate you saying that. That's very kind, and I don't take those words lightly. And again, at my age, most of the people that I lead are I could be literally be their parent, and in some cases, maybe even their grandparent.
Yeah.
But you talk about relevance. What is relevance? And I think we can see all of us are in different stages of life and in different situations. Relevance can mean a lot of different things, but for me, relevance always meant what is happening right now. Like, where's the church right now? Who are the people we are leading? What are we supposed to be saying? And not how do I say this? Pining for the past.
Yeah, it's good.
Not wishing that things were the way they were 20 years ago.
Wow.
When I had more energy, or maybe that was my style of music. I mean, look, you have your golden era of music.
Sure.
If I were to say, hey, what's the best era of music, you would pick the era that you grew up in.
Yeah.
Same with me.
Yeah.
I have my favorite era of music. That's not relevant. What's relevant is, what is God doing right now, and how can you be a part of that, and what role do you play? And so relevance is a sticky word, because we think we've got to sing all the newest stuff. We have to look a certain way. We have to act a certain way, and that's really not it. It's about who are you, who is your most genuine self in this time and place right now. How can you bring who you are, what you've learned, and your best gift to God and to your church in what's going on today?
Yeah,
in
good.
The life of the church, in the life of music itself. I mean, that's relevance. Now, if you want to unpack that further, one of the ways I feel like I have been successful and stayed, quote unquote, relevant in worship music is because I've kept myself open to new things.
So good.
And that's hard to do, man. I'm telling you, we all know, we all have heard our grandparents or our parents say, "Oh, you kids and your music."
Yeah.
Real music was when, or nobody likes that stuff that you're listening to.
Right.
We get that old crusty man mentality to where nothing was as good as what we experienced in the past. But I've always tried to, and this is in part because of the radio show that I do. I hear new worship music all the time.
Right.
And one of the things that I was tasked to do at my church, as soon as I got there 17 years ago at Church on the Move in Tulsa, was raise up the next generation. That was a cry of their heart.
Yeah.
And that's a unique situation where it's like, it's not about you. It's about who you're raising up. So the relevance is how do we open ourselves up to what God is doing right now in the church and in music? And then we have to, we can't get set in our ways.
Yeah.
Listen, man, you got to stay in shape.
Yeah.
You got to take care of your body.
Yeah.
You got to look good. You have to, we live in a visual world today where everything's online, and you can get beat down by the way you look, by the way you, by your energy level. And that's just another thing I think that I have figured out, even in my 50s, is I've got to work harder. I've got to go to the gym more. I've got to watch what I eat more, and I have to stay around younger people. That's what keeps me relevant, I think, is that I open my home up, and I open my life up and my thinking up to a younger generation that wants to express what they're feeling in music and art and worship.
It's so good. It's so good. I was reading through Acts chapter 2 again this morning, and this prophecy, it's the Joel prophecy. Acts chapter 2, verse 16, it says, "No, what you see was predicted long ago by the prophet Joel. In the last days, God says, I will pour out my spirit upon all people." I love that word, that phrase, all people. And then it says, "Your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your young men will see visions, and your old men will dream dreams." And I love that everybody has a role here. The young men the old men. It says, in those days I will pour out my spirit even on my servants, men and women alike. So they didn't leave the girls out either. And they will,
let's preach that.
They will prophesy. They all will prophesy. And I will cause wonders in the heavens above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and clouds of smoke. The sun will become dark, the moon turn blood red before that great and glorious day of the Lord arrives. But everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. And I love that everybody in this passage has a role. They have a part to play. And honestly, it's this discipline that you so eloquently talked about of what is happening in the now moment, because prophecy is what's happening right now. How can I be a blessing how can I minister to people right now? That is being a prophetic worshiper, a prophetic worship leader, not living in a past, not living in a season, not living in a previous harvest, but understanding the harvest that's in front of us right now, the ripe harvest that's in front of us, and how you can contribute. Your role may have changed and how may look different. Like what you're holding, the mics that you're using, the guitars that you're playing or not playing, it all may look different. The clothes that you're wearing may look different and change. But we don't, just like we say in church world, we don't marry methods, we marry message. And so being in tune to the Spirit, and this whole passage is all about God pouring out his Spirit. And I just believe he pours it out on all people. And it is up to us to understand what he's doing in the life of our community, no matter your age, no matter your race, no matter your socioeconomic background, no matter whatever it is that makes us be different. I just love that we could come together. You and I both, for example, could come together and lead worship and be in the same spirit, be in one spirit as Jesus prayed for. In the Bible, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's good. God doesn't exist in the past, the present, or the future. He exists in all three.
Right.
God is outside of time. He is existing in all three at the same time, and that's something that we can learn from. Is that we're not, in our mortal bodies, we exist in the present. We remember the past and we hope for the future, but we don't exist in all three.
Right.
But what God can do through us is remind us that the past was amazing. Mm-hmm. Let's don't let it go. But the present is amazing as well. He's doing something right now. And just going to that scripture, he's pouring out his Spirit upon all men. He did it back then.
Right.
He's doing it now. He will do it in the future. So God has not given up on you.
Yeah.
If you're older, God has not taken away his calling and his Spirit from you. He's not finished pouring out his Spirit on you. That's why when you're older, you can dream dreams.
Yeah.
You can have hope for the future. And there's something coming that's even greater than what you're experiencing right now, and even what was experienced in the past, because God is greater.
Yeah.
God continues. We haven't seen the end of God.
Man.
We haven't seen the greatest things that he's done yet. That is still to come. And that's one of the things that keeps me motivated as an older musician and worship leader, is that the future is exciting.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of it. That the best days are not behind me, they're actually in front of me. Now they're going to look different.
Yeah.
I'm going to look different. And I have to be okay with that. And like you said, maybe our roles will change. Maybe we won't be the guy on stage or the woman on stage that is the main leader and the one who is driving the whole thing. But we will have a place if we submit to the Spirit of the Lord.
Yeah.
And God has a job for all of us. Now, we can make this argument. We can go back to back to the Old Testament, when God was giving all of his instruction to how to build the temple and the priests and what they're supposed to do. And there is some language there that talks about how priests are to stop doing what they're doing at age 50. But what we have to remember is, man, the temple back then was like a slaughterhouse 24/7.
Right.
I mean, it was hard work.
Sure.
There were animals being sacrificed and cleanup and details just going on constantly in the temple and the tent of meeting. And so I think there was in my opinion, reading through the Word, there was a time when when you had to let the young men step up and do the heavy lifting and do the majority of the work.
Yeah.
But the Levites were there for life. They were, the more that you experience, the more you did, the more knowledge you have.
Yeah.
And it was the older Levites' duty to continue to pour in their knowledge to the ones that were coming up. And Nick, I see this all the time. You and I've had this conversation before, that there is beginning to be a lack of leadership in worship from men and women the age of 35 to 55 to 65. That men and women are getting to a certain age and they're saying, I don't belong here anymore, or I don't fit in anymore. And that is just that's your ego taking over and telling you, what you're good at and what you're not good at. I think the older you get, the more experience you have to pass down to a younger generation.
Yeah, I love that. And let me just say this too, to add on to that. I think we undervalue the spiritual experience that we bring to the table. Like the gifting, you can be 22 and have all the gift and talent in the world and be able to do all the Justin Timberlake runs on the planet, like, or whatever, pick your artist, Bieber.
Yeah.
You can look and do all of that. But there's something about walking with Jesus and doing it for decade after decade after decade that the younger generation actually, they need that wisdom. They need that guidance. They need to be mentored and told how to walk through life with people and how to go at the pace of Jesus, how to understand what it means to follow Jesus. And when you understand the spiritual value as somebody who considers themselves older, wherever you are, don't undervalue the spiritual experience that you bring to the table, the history that you have in your worship journal with God. I heard Brian and Jen Johnson say this one time at a worship teaching, that every time that we worship, we add on to our personal worship history with God, with the Father. And so in other words,
that's good.
if I remember singing when I accepted the call into full-time ministry in 2012, and made the jump from corporate to full-time. The song came out by Hillsong. Reuben Morgan wrote it, Christ is Enough. Christ is enough for me. I've decided to follow Jesus, no turning back. That song, in that moment, I was in New York City at the very first ever Hillsong conference, and I was just came into full-time ministry, and I was at conference. They led the song, and my wife and I were a wreck, because we were singing that song fully, authentically, surrendering everything we have. It's like no turning back. We're not going back. We're following the call of God in our life. That is on my personal history, my personal journey with God. That was 10 years ago, Andy. So that's 10 years ago that we answered that call. But what I'm saying is that we have these experiences that a lot of the younger people don't have. They haven't walked through yet. And so this is even why singing a song like Same God that just recently got released by Elevation Church, where it's just, he's the same.
Great song.
He did it then, he's going to do it now. There's a difference between having a 20-year-old sing it and having you sing it. And I just believe that there's a different anointing, if I can use that word, or it carries a different weight when you can say, man, I've walked through some stuff in life, and I believe that you are the same God because I've seen it happen in my life with my own eyes. And there's just something that's attractional about the faith attached to that statement when somebody like you leads
That's
it.
right. That's right. And I experience that all the time. And I want to help young worship leaders continue their journey by saying, look, I know I could step out and say that, and it means more to the church than when you step out and say it. But you know what? I was saying that stuff when I was your age.
Sure.
And there was an older minister that was encouraging me to say, I know it doesn't mean that much to you now, but it will in 30 years. So just keep going.
Yeah.
Just keep going. That's why we're valuable as older leaders, is to help younger worship leaders say, just keep going, do it again.
Yeah.
I just had that experience this weekend, Nick, I led worship with some younger worship leaders that I've been training for a long time. And they had they walked through a couple of things that they hadn't experienced before and that was new to them in ministry. And I was like, look, just mark that down on your journal that you experienced that, because it's going to happen again, and that will inform you as you move forward. I have a friend of mine who just moved to a new church and to take over as the lead worship pastor, And they still have on staff at this church a man that's 80 years old.
Wow.
And is one of their worship pastors.
Wow.
And he said that he watched him lead worship one Sunday morning and did it with such passion and conviction and tears streaming down his face as he talked about his love for Jesus. And I'm like, that dude is my hero. I want to drive up and I want to go spend the day with that guy. I'm confident where I am at 56. I want to be confident when I'm 80.
Right.
And still able to lead a church in worship and still just like floored at the beauty and incredibleness of our God. And I just think that's another thing we can bring is the longer we do this, the more we live life. And here's the thing, Nick. You know, younger worship leaders that are in these positions across the country, a lot of them have never suffered loss.
Mm-hmm.
They've never lost a parent. They've never lost a grandparent. They've never been fired from a job. They've never had a financial crisis. They've never had a child with a serious injury or illness. They've never been behind on their mortgage or their credit card bill, or
right.
They've never had to move because of something that happened in their life and they had to travel across the country and move. They've never lived through a war.
Right.
A lot of them now have lived through a pandemic.
Yep.
and some just some social uprising in our country.
Sure.
But they've never gone through real hardship.
Mm-hmm.
And older people like myself, older adults who have lived through a lot of that.
Yeah.
We understand what suffering is. And so it's difficult for a younger worship leader
right.
to get up there and say, hey, everything's going to be fine. Just have faith.
Yeah.
God will get you through this.
Right.
And I just want to pull them aside and just go, hang on a second. Do you know that for sure?
Yeah.
Like really? Have your marriage been in trouble?
Right.
Or your kids been running from God and on drugs and you don't know where they are, and you're going to tell that person everything's going to be okay? Well, let me just walk you through that and how you can. I know you believe that, but I want to help you put it in a different language so that the people who are older or that you're serving in your church, they don't feel like you're just throwing words at them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what older leaders can bring to the table is a sense of perspective.
Yes.
To say, you're not just singing and leading the younger generation in worship. You're leading parents and grandparents and people who are walking through really difficult times in your church.
Yeah, I love that, man. That is so good. I can think of crisis after crisis and tragedy after tragedy from church members, understanding their story, what they're walking through, and then me in the green room right before we go out or whatever, just telling our team, hey, people are walking through it. They're going through it. So like what we're singing is not, it's more than a song. We're about to minister God's word through song and encounter his presence, and they need a healing touch. They need the Holy Spirit to bind up their broken hearts and be a comfort to them right here in this moment. So like, let's take this seriously. Let's go for it. Do it with joy. But man, we like understand that. I'll never forget, as you were talking, I was thinking about 9/11. I mean, we've got worship leaders on our team that weren't even born yet. Right. But I remember the Sunday after 9/11. I remember 9/11 was a Tuesday, and I remember going with my family to church, and I remember asking my dad, I'm like, where did all these people come from? It was probably one of the largest attended Sundays that I could ever remember in my life. And I remember walking in, and people are hungry for God because we've never been through anything like that as a nation. And I think I wasn't leading worship that Sunday, but I think to myself, man, what if I was? What would I say? How would I lead our church through that? And I think we always have to be prepared. This is coming back to the relevance. This is coming back to the prophetic. It's coming back to understanding the moment that no matter what your age, no matter what you look like, you have to be able to engage with the season that your church is walking through.
Yes.
Whether it's COVID, whether it's a war, whether it's an event, whether it's good or bad or what division, we've got to understand that we're going to have some moments this weekend that we're going to circle around the name of Jesus, and we're going to circle around the finished work of the cross. We're going to celebrate what God has done for us. and we're gonna bring relevance to the table, and we all get to play a part in that. Sons and daughters, old men, women, no matter what you look like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I will tell you this: if your team is not complete, I don't think your team is complete and ready to take the stage if you don't have a mix of ages on that platform.
it's good.
If you're all older and you don't have younger people represented, you're missing it, and you're missing an opportunity to connect with the younger generation. If you have all younger people on stage and you don't have anybody older that can bring some perspective to where everyone is right now, and how what the options are of walking through difficult seasons, then I think you don't have a complete team.
Right.
And I just believe that's what the kingdom of God is. It's, we're neither Jew nor Greek nor free nor slave nor male nor female. I would also say it's neither young nor old. That we all have to do this together, and that brings about the healthiest body that the church can be, is when the age groups can come together and respect one another and learn from one another, the young people learning from the older people and the older people learning from the younger people. That has to go both ways.
Yeah, I love that. And I know in a previous episode we talked about music kind of reaching multiple generations. So not being afraid to go from, a young and free, youthier vibe to singing a hymn and giving everybody from 7 to 70, as we can kind of make that joke, a song to sing. And this is why I'm also a fan of having, a mix of guy-led and girl-led songs, giving everybody a chance to sing in the room. So, but I think the same is true of your leadership, of who is on stage and singing. If your stage can reflect your community, if your stage can reflect who it is that's in the room, it just makes it so much more, it's easier for people to engage with and follow your leadership.
Yeah, and we unpacked relevance at the beginning of this podcast, but I want to take a different angle at relevance right now. That there are some songs that are new right now and energetic that I maybe are on the list, and I'm been asked to sing them and lead them, and I will politely decline to say, you know what, this doesn't fit me. This doesn't fit my age demographic. It doesn't fit who I am in my season of life.
Yeah.
I get it. I think it's a great song, but I'm going to feel foolish singing this song because it doesn't fit me. Mm-hmm. I would rather sing this song or that song, or you know what? I can help you as an older leader take that song that's meant for a more youthful worship leader. I can help you figure out how to sing it the right way and present it the right way. Give me a hymn. Give me an older worship song, or give me a song that feels more relevant in my stage of life.
Yeah.
And then what I can do is the next time that one of the younger leaders has to sing a hymn, and this probably happens to you, Nick, but it happens to me all the time. When a young person sings a hymn, I want to sit down and help them with the lyrics, help them understand the history behind this song, help them understand why these chord progressions are different than anything else that you played the last month, but why this song is important, and find that depth of these older songs and why they were written and why they're important now. Again, that's where to stay relevant is not just to understand what's going on in the world of music and in worship and in the church, but also where you are in life. Yeah. And don't pretend. Yeah. Don't try to be cool when it's going to look like an act and you're just trying too hard. Be relevant to yourself and your stage of life. Yeah. And people will respond to that. I think I really do. That's been my experience. Yeah, man. I love that. We can come up with example after example. And the one that I was thinking about as you said that was Goodness of God. Man, that's one of my favorite worship songs of all time. And it's not that new. I mean, it's not that old. Right. But listen, I was leading worship at Pastor Shannon's church, and his wife, Cindy, who leads with us sometimes. And when she sings that song and leads the church, I mean, they've been in ministry over 30 years, faithful, integrity, all the things, right? And so there's just, it's like, I cry. I can't even play. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. I mean, when somebody older sings that, and they mean it, man, now that'll get you. Yeah, I cannot sing that song without just almost losing it every time.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Anyways, hey, let's wrap this. Thank you so much, Andy, for your insight. You are not too old. You are relevant. and so
you talking about me?
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, no, and me too. And if you're listening to this podcast, and age is a thing to you, or you're having that question, let me just encourage you. Don't focus on your age. Focus on your relevance. Don't focus on what you look like or what people may perceive of you. Focus on engaging with and help, like you're getting people to help follow you better in worship. And that, again, it's going to look different for everybody. But man, we believe that there is a place in the body for every age.
Yeah. That's right. And let me tell you something. God celebrates you. If no one else around you celebrates you in your stage of life, God celebrates you. And he is just so excited every time that you take that stage to honor him in worship. God is pleased with you, so keep going.
Worship leaders, we're cheerleading you on. Thank you again for joining us on this episode of Leading Worship. This podcast is produced by Yellowbox. We are passionate about developing creatives in the local church. And if you happen to be driving to church on Sunday morning, turn on the radio station and you hear Andy's voice. Andy, why would they hear you on Sunday morning? What would be going on?
Because I have a radio show called Worship with Andy Chrisman that is syndicated on 430 stations around the world in 13 countries. And if you don't have my show on your local station, pick up the phone and call your local radio station, email them, text them, hit them on social media and say,
Andy.
You want to hear,
we want to
hear Worship with Andy Chrisman.
Come on.
And just go to andychrisman.net for a list of stations around you. And you can also check out my vocal masterclass that's available as well. And that's where I download my almost 40 years of vocal training into 10 lessons. And I'm pretty excited about that.
It's awesome. I love it. And again, thank you for listening to the Yellowbox podcast, Leading Worship. We'll see you on the next episode.